there are two things I'm going to show you with the filters. The first is what's called the top 10 function, and then the second one is the type of filter interactiveness, if you will, once you get to the dashboard section. So let's begin. I'm going to bring in let's bring in subcategory as our starting point. Okay, and I'm going to bring in sales like we always do. So simple little data set, right? And we're going to color code this just by holding the control. See, you got that little plus, and I'm just going to drop it in color so we can see it. And I'm going to go highest to lowest. All right, there we go. Pretty easy. And let's put a label there just for the mood. Okay, if I wanted to filter this to have the top 10 or even top 5 because it's a bit easier to count. Let's say I only want to filter top 5. So why would you want to do this? Why couldn't I just filter these ones out by dropping this in filter and selecting the ones I want? Well, that's because let's say I've got information up till August, and then the September data comes in, and there's a massive spike in appliances, or not appliances, let's say there's a massive spike in art to the point where it's larger than the rest. Because I have explicitly, or I guess hard coded the filters, it won't pick that up. We want something that's more dynamic, meaning if information comes in, I want it to refilter based on the information every time. I don't want to have to come in and keep adjusting it. So that's where we can use the top 10 or the bottom 10 or whatever number you want for the filtering. And it's so easy to do. All we do is we grab category, right? The thing that we're actually looking at. So I'm going to do it from here. I'm going to go subcategory. We drop it in filters, much like a basic filter. And instead of using this general one, we're going to use, which one is it? Top. All right, let's go ahead and go there, top. And we're going to use this by field. By formula, I am not going to go through this just yet because we need what's called parameters and we haven't covered that yet. And we're not going to cover that really until the expert section. So, and pretty much you can cover most of your analysis with just this first one anyway, right? It's when you want to get very specific behavior, then you can use the by formula. Okay, let's bring this over here. And I want to go by field. I can go top 10 or however many you want. So you can go enter value. Let's say I want to do top 100, top 3, whatever it might be. We're going to do the top 5, right? And that means we're going to get everything up till appliance, right? We're going to do sales because that's what we're counting, the sales over here. And we're going to do it by sum, right? Because this is by sum. So be careful not to change this because then you may get behavior that doesn't make sense. So if I do average, it's going to be the average of, let's say there's 10 sets of data in here, right? Or 5 or whatever, right? It's going to be the average across these values. So the filtering may not behave as you think because you're assuming it's on sum when actually it's on average. So just be careful with that. So sum, and we just go apply. And as you can see, it's only shown the top 5. We can do, let's say, top 7, apply, right? And we can do the other way as well. So if I go none for a second, and we want to look at the bottom 5, okay, the lowest performing, we can do that as well. We just change this from top to bottom. Let's change this to bottom 5 and go apply. And when I hit this apply, it's going to look like it's the top ones, but that's only because it scales to this number. So really look at these figures. So was that 57,000? That should be one of the values we're going to get. And as you go, or 52,000, sorry. So those are our bottom 5. That's really useful for, let's say you do have a region like this, right? I'm going to go back to none, right? And I'm going to color code this, right? Good, bad kind of coloring, okay? And let's go entire, no, we don't need entire view, right? So I'm managing like all these categories as a business owner, right? I'm not interested in the ones that are doing well. I'm interested in the ones that are doing bad. So every month or every week, I want to get a report saying these are the ones we got to focus on. This is where this function works great. So we go edit filter. I always want to see the bottom, let's say bottom 3 of sales by sum. Okay. I know that every week or every month, these are the items I got to look into, right? And that's how you would use the filtering. Okay. Now let's look at how this filtering filtering option works in a dashboard. So first we got to bring it in. I'm going to get rid of this subcategory because I want, actually, no, I don't want to get rid of it. I just want to get rid of this. So I just want to go back to general and all. Okay. And why is it not working? Hang on. Let's go none. All right. Okay. Okay, so that's back to normal. If you're unsure about what that's actually doing, I would actually recommend get rid of it, put a fresh one in, go all. So we're gonna have everything in our dashboard. And let's go create a dashboard. Okay, and what I might actually do is let's add category. Category. I'm going to use a search button. Category. Okay, and there's a reason I'm going to have category. I'm going to show you a few interesting things. And let's color it by like that. Okay, basically what I've done is just using category for the coloring. Let's go ahead and create a dashboard, which is this middle one right here. And we're going to just simply bring this main one in. So just drag and drop, pretty easy. Let's reduce this size just so I can see the whole thing. Okay, and the first thing you'll notice is we have the legend. Okay, so there's a few things you can do with this legend. The first one is if you move it, it's going to move around much like a tile, right? Just like any sheet. So if you hold the shift button on your keyboard, you can convert it to a floating legend, right? Floating meaning it's actually just on top of your work, right? This is really good if you want to put it like somewhere like there, so it's not taking up too much room. My problem with having it like this is you've got all this wasted real estate. Okay, you got to really think of this as real estate. That is wasted space. So if you can kind of eliminate that, you make more room for the part that matters, which is your data. Okay, so if I go like that, I can hold shift and bring it like this, or if we leave it there, I can click on this button right here and I can look for this floating, and that does the same thing. Okay, so I can have it like that. Let's go undo. Let's just get rid of that floating. Okay, there's other things I can do. If I bring this, let's say, to the bottom, like so, I can reorganize this to go that way. So it's a little bit more minimalistic. So I can go right click, arrange items, and I can go single row, a single column, multiple columns, right? These are the ones you choose from. I usually do single row, like so. And if you have words that are quite long, you can go just before any of these colors and make it wider, and it will automatically size them to be like equidistant. Equidistant, I think that's the word, equal distances, okay? And I would also get rid of this category simply because, well, you don't really need to, and it's kind of implied what the data is. I'd resize this like so, and that's a lot better. I've got rid of that white part, which is great, and I have this just really kind of small. You don't really need to notice it. So that's one thing you can do with a legend. The other thing is if you activate it simply by clicking, go right click and make sure this is ticked. And what this does is if I click on technology, it will highlight technology or office supplies or furniture. Okay, and this is really good for features such as this. Like if I reverse category and subcategory, I'm going to click on this go to sheet button. Okay, let's just reverse it for a moment, and the colors are all going to mix. Okay, so we'll go back to the dashboard, and if I click this now, it actually pops out, right? Which ones are the highest, which ones are the lowest, and again gives you like another perspective on your data. Okay, so that's pretty much the extent of legends. Okay, so there's really not too much to it. Let's bring this back, and now I'm going to show you some filtering options, right? The filtering options really come in the form of buttons or controls, because when you publish these dashboards, you're going to have users interacting with your data. You don't want to have to create 3 sheets for each of these, right? Hence, you want to instead create filters so that they can see what they want to see. That's the whole idea of business intelligence and using the cloud. Let's bring in those filters. If I click on, is it that one? Sorry, I've got to activate it first. Okay, and when you activate it, simply by clicking, you're going to see this analysis. All right, and if you don't click there, if I click outside, you notice that analysis is no longer there. Okay, so make sure you activate it first, like so, and you'll see this little gray box, analysis, filters, and you've got them right here. Okay, so if I do one for category, okay, so now we have a filter. I'm going to do another one. So make sure I activate it, analysis, filters, subcategory. We'll get that one now as well. And filters, let's add sum of sales. Why not? Okay. Now, if I come back to main, right, we have all these other fields. So the question is, how come these aren't available in my filtering? Right? Oh, let's go back here. Right? How come they're not all available? It's only these 3. The reason is You don't want all of them there. And if you do, you have to add them to this filtering part, okay? Or in here, right? So you're only able to filter for anything that you're using. So if I wanted to filter for region, okay, I would have to add region in first, like so. Go use all, okay? All right, go back to the dashboard, oops. And if I go now to analysis, filters, now you'll see region, right? So now we can see the region. Now I'm going to show you a few different filtering types you can have here. First of all, I'm going to space these out a little bit just because it looks a bit funny, right? So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to put one there. Sales we can leave. Category, yeah, let's put it here, right? Now, if you have this kind of problem where you're trying to put it underneath, that's because these ones are in what's called a container, right? Like so. And the way to introduce a container is to use this button right here, right? Either of these two, depending what you're trying to do. We're going to use the vertical one, right? Which is one right here. All right, let's get out of the drawing tool. And again, everything works in tiles, so pretty easy. Let's drop that in there. Okay, we now have a what do you call it, a container. We can bring this region one in, like so. And we can bring in category. So you can see now that there is space there. Right, there you go. And we have this one. Let's make it a bit wider. Let's drop that here and make this longer. Okay, so we can see the whole thing. All right, so a few things we can do. We can actually change what this is like. Instead of having these buttons like that, right, you can have them as radio buttons. I can go right click, single view list. Okay, so that means I can only select one at a time. That could be one type of behavior you want, because you don't want people viewing two regions at the same time, because let's say, oops, sorry, picked the wrong one. Where is it? Multiple values list. Let's say you have something like that and they think they're looking at north, right? But they've just failed to see that, oh, south has actually been ticked, and then an error can be had, right? An error could occur. So instead, you can convert this to single value list with radio buttons, like so. You can have this as a drop down, so single value drop down, so they can pick it like so, right? This is good to keep it a bit more minimized, right? So you're not taking up so much room. We can do single value slider, which really works well, maybe more with numbers as opposed to this. I actually don't like this one very much, just because it doesn't show you what each of these points mean. And if you have, let's say, this many points, it doesn't look very good. So I tend to not really use this one, right? I tend to use either single value lists or single value dropdown, right, as my main ones for this single group. I can also do multiple value lists, which is the standard default one. But what I like to add is if you right click and go customize, I like to add show apply. And the reason for this is if I'm picking, probably applies better to this one, right? So let's go customize, show apply. If I'm going, oh, I'm interested in like 5 of them, I don't want to have to click each one and then the graphic keeps updating every time I click it. Especially when you get to really large data sets, you really don't want to do that. So I tend to put this apply button and go and just pick the ones I'm interested in, or for the user to pick the ones they're interested in. And when they're happy with it, then they click apply. Okay? That's what I like to use for that one. We can also do other things like the multiple value dropdown. So same idea, but in a dropdown form, right? And the last, oh, sorry, there's one more, multiple value list, custom. This one you can actually search it up. So if I go north, right? That's it. And what that does is it adds filters one by one. Again, I tend to not really use this because then people can just add really weird kind of things. So if they go NO, right? And it starts to get a bit out of control. So I tend to not really use that one. Wildcard is good for if you want to create like a search engine. Like if you have a lot of things, let's say people's names or identification numbers or something, it's good because you can do partial matches, right? What other ones can we do? So you can do that for pretty much all of them. Now, one last thing I'm going to show you before we finish up. I'm going to switch this back to the original ones we had. Okay, we're going to select all for here and apply. This is what's called the relevant list, right? And it's going to be these two buttons here, only relevant or all values. By default, everything is set to all values, right? And here's why. Let's say I'm going to look at furniture, right? When I click furniture, what would be great is if this minimizes to the ones in furniture, which are bookcases, chairs, tables, furnishings. Because why would I filter for furniture and then see paper? They're completely unrelated. There's no data of paper in the furniture data set. So I want this to minimize so there's less for me or less for the user to choose from. And here's how you do it. If you right click here and go, actually we'll do a test first. If I set this to furniture, this stays the same. Okay, let's do that again. I'm going to set it to all. I'm going to set this one now to only relevant values. Therefore, when I click on furniture, I can only see the ones that are part of the furniture list. This is fantastic for doing deep dives because it leads you to what is important and it kind of removes anything you don't need to see, right? And that's pretty much all there is to filters, apart from some of these extra features, which we will cover later on. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.